Day 5. About 550 to 50 million years ago. Genesis 1, verses 20 through 23. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. From day 5's mention of sea animals and mammals, in Hebrew that's spheres, nephesh, and ap, we can conclude land animals were created at this time, including the dinosaurs. Not specifically mentioning land animals, such as the dinosaurs, does not mean a mistake, only that they were not mentioned. Again, an omission doesn't signal misinformation. It simply means God chose not to specifically mention them. Remember, the Bible is not trying to be a science book, but the science that is contained in it is true. Although there is great fascination toward the dinosaur eon, 65 to 250 million years ago, their existence is not cogent to man's creation. Readers of Genesis for the last 3,500 years would not comprehend such creatures. The focus of Genesis is primarily about the important history that leads to man's creation and salvation. This focus is seen when the more significant land animals affecting man are mentioned in day 6. And remember, evolution remains an incomplete and insufficient theory. This is clearly seen by the Cambrian period, which in a geological blink of an eye, 13 to 25 million years, all major animal phyla appear. This jump goes much beyond what Darwin himself believed possible. Termed Darwin's doubt, Darwin stated, "The case at present, the Cambrian fossils, must remain inexplicable and may be truly urged as a valid argument against the views herein entertained, evolution." To which Darwin continues, "I could give no satisfactory answer. As more fossils are found, we see the diversity of life is exponentially multiplying. The explosion of early mammal discoveries, particularly from China, over the last 2 decades has been eye-opening, mind-numbing, and absolutely dazzling," says atheist David Krauss, a vertebrate paleontologist. This dramatic increase in fossil diversity requires even more missing links that should be easily found, yet they don't seem to exist. This huge divergence also means more and more time is needed for the random chance explanation of evolution to be conceivable. Instead, we are seeing that mathematically there is not nearly enough time. Rather than a few million years, hundreds of millions and billions of extra years are needed to consider it reasonable. Further, evolution theory actually defies the second law of thermodynamics. In his symposium paper, Inadequacies of Neo-Darwinian Evolution as a Scientific Theory, Dr. Murray Eden, professor of electrical engineering at MIT, emphasized the following: "It is our contention that if random chance is given a serious and crucial interpretation from a probabilistic point of view, the randomness postulate is highly implausible, and that an adequate scientific theory of evolution must await the discovery and elucidation of new natural laws, physical, chemical, and biological." In Algorithms and the Neo-Darwinian Theory of Evolution, Marcel P. Suchenberger of the University of Paris calculated the probability of evolution based on mutation and natural selection. Like many other noted scientists, he concluded that it was not conceivable and there is no chance. The math just doesn't add up, and we know in good science, the math must always add up. The genome of each human cell contains about 20,000 genes. That will give rise to about 1 million different proteins, states Precision Med. Even creating the enormous complexity of a single protein, the odds are 1 in a billion, states Gregory Ray in the journal American Zoologist. Mutation rates, genetic material, and information defies waiting times for necessary changes. Marcel Schutzenberger concludes, Thus, we believe there is a considerable gap in the neo-Darwinian theory of evolution, and we believe this gap to be of such a nature that it cannot be bridged with the current conceptions of biology. The scientific community has more questions than ever. Frank Tipler, in his book, lists 10 steps in the course of human evolution. He famously declares, each step of which is so improbable that before it would have occurred by chance alone, the sun would have ceased to be a main sequence star and incinerated the earth. Many misguided people, both Christian and non-Christian, say that the Bible and science can't agree. In point of fact, we see that God actually uses science and observation to give everyone evidence that He does indeed exist. This is confirmed in Romans 1:20, which says, "For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God." This video is directed to counter the idea that the Bible and science are not compatible. We will show as well that Genesis chapter 1 is an accurate, coherent, and reliable account of the creation of the universe. Let's review some of the approximate cosmic time periods. About 13.8 billion years ago, Genesis 1 verse 1 says God created the heavens and the earth. The Hebrew verb used here is bara, meaning to create out of nothing. Cosmology's Big Bang is the Bible's beginning. About 13 billion years ago, the Milky Way galaxy stars started to assemble. About 4.6 billion years ago, the sun coalesced from a cloud of gas called the solar nebula. About 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth formed, orbiting around the sun. About 4.425 billion years ago, the moon formed. Says German Aerospace Center, a planet 1/9 the size of the Earth crashed into the Earth, and the left material formed the moon. About 4 billion years ago, Genesis 1 verse 2 says, "Darkness was over the surface of the deep. The Spirit of God was brooding over the waters." So we see the Earth had a dark, thick atmosphere with oceans covering its surface, and the Spirit of God brooded over the waters, indicating that God brought the first life, unicellular prokaryotes, into the oceans. An important fact often missed is recognizing this verse brings the reader's perspective to the surface of the earth. Therefore, remember that the creation periods will all be descriptions from the vantage point of standing on the earth's surface, watching God direct His creation. Now, as we look at Genesis 1, we'll be carefully reviewing the translation of the Hebrew script. Keep in mind the Old Hebrew written language has only about a few thousand words. English has over 1 million words. For example, the Hebrew word for day is yom. Some hold that yom must be translated only as 24 hours, and that God created the universe in 6 24-hour days. Even the famous theologian St. Augustine, way back in the 5th century, opposed the 6 24-hour day premise, writing, "What kind of days these were, it is extremely difficult or perhaps impossible to determine." Now, why would Augustine question that? Because in Hebrew the word yom, or day, is variously translated as 12 hours, 24 hours, or an age of time, as in Isaiah 25:9, in that day. Now, it certainly doesn't have to be translated a 24-hour day. Day 1, about 3.8 to 3.5 billion years ago. Genesis 1 verses 3 through 5. God called the light day and the darkness night. Here we see Earth's heavy atmosphere only partially clearing, with some distinction between day and night, now allowing photosynthesis. Day 2, about 3 to 2 billion years ago, Genesis 1 verses 6 through 8. And God separated the water from under the sky from the water above it. Here our water cycle continued to be established as water condensed from the thick atmosphere, adding to the oceans. Day 3, about 2 billion to 600 million years ago. Genesis 1, verses 9 through 13. Let dry ground appear and the vegetation. Tectonic plate movement and volcanoes form continents, and the first plant life appears as ancient plastids. Day 4. About 600 to 550 million years ago. Genesis 1, verses 14 through 19. Let the lights be in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. Here we see the atmosphere has now fully cleared. The verb asa is used, indicating that the already made sun, moon, and stars are marking the daylight and the seasons necessary for plant and animal life. Day 5. About 550 to 50 million years ago. Genesis 1, verses 20 through 23. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing that moves about in it, and every winged bird according to its kind. After the Cambrian explosion, this points to the creation of sea creatures and some land creatures, including the amazing dinosaurs. Day 6. About 50 million years to 30,000 years ago. Genesis 1, verses 24 through 31. Let the land produce the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule the earth. God's pinnacle of creation is mankind, with the historical persons Adam and Eve created in his image to rule the earth and have a relationship with him. This analysis of Genesis 1 shows the amazing verification between science and the Bible. Unlike any other book, the Bible displays absolute truth. We are given the privilege to know the Creator of the universe as a loving Father and friend. Even the angels long to understand this honor in 1 Peter 1:12. God knows what's best for us and the moral life that will give us purpose and joy. He gives us free will to choose a relationship with Him or not. Deuteronomy 30:15 says, I have set before you this day life and death. The evidence is clear. Choose life.